We hiked out late, left the trailhead at 3:42 p.m., made the lake's edge by sundown. It was supposed to be a simple weekend loop. 2 nights, 4 tents, same crew as always. But when we found a clearing by the water, flat ground, no wind, perfect tree coverage, there were already tents there. 5 of them, identical to ours. I remember thinking, did someone beat us here? But there were no voices. No gear outside. Just 5 green tents in a neat semicircle like they'd been arranged for a group photo. Only, they matched ours exactly. Right down to the worn logo on Maddie's rainfly and the patch of duct tape over Henry's mesh window. We unzipped ours from our packs. Still there. Still rolled. Still sealed. Still inside. That meant what we were looking at weren't duplicates. They were ours. Already set up. Already waiting. No one wanted to unzip the 5th one. The other 4? They matched us, so we assumed some kind of glitch. Maybe a prank, maybe someone duplicated our gear. But that last tent didn't have a match. It was just extra. I opened it before anyone could argue. My heart was thudding hard enough to make my fingers shake, but I had to see. Inside, sleeping bag. Unzip. Empty. A lantern hung from the top crossbar, off, but warm to the touch. And sitting in the middle of the tent, stacked in a little triangle, were 6 Polaroid. Real ones. They showed us around a fire we hadn't built yet. In one, Henry was carving into a log. In another, Maddie was laughing, wearing a sweater she hadn't unpacked. The last one showed me. Sitting in my chair. Looking off to the side like I'd just heard something in the woods. We hadn't taken any photos. And none of us brought a Polaroid camera. But the film was fresh. Still smelling of chemical haze. We tried to laugh it off. Said it had to be a prank, that someone must have gotten here before us and recreated our setup just to screw with us. But no one could explain the Polaroids. Then Maddie asked, did anyone actually check inside the bag? I had already opened the tent, so I figured, what's one more step down the rabbit hole? I knelt down and tugged the zipper. The bag was zipped all the way to the top, like someone had gone to sleep in it and never got out. It resisted at first, tight from the cold, but then it gave. And the smell hit me. Not rot. Not mildew. Lake water. Warm. Algae thick. Coppery. When I pulled the top open, it sloshed. No body. No clothes. Just water, trapped inside the insulation like it had been poured in and sealed before we arrived. It was steaming slightly. Still warm from whoever, or whatever, had been inside it. I reached in without thinking. There was a long hair. Floating. Blonde. None of us had blonde hair. We never built the fire that first night. We all just sort of sat around in a circle, flashlights pointed at the ground, pretending we weren't too rattled to eat. I didn't even bother rolling out my sleeping bag. I just laid on top of it, staring at the tent ceiling, waiting for something, anything, to make sense. It never did. I must have passed out around 3 a.m. That was the last time I remember checking my watch. When I stepped out at sunrise, the air was sharp and damp. And the first thing I noticed was the dew was gone from the grass, but only in a pattern. 5 distinct sets of muddy prints. Crisp, deep, dry. Leading from the treeline straight to our tent. I yelled for the others. Henry stumbled out first, then Maddie and Jill. They saw them too. We walked the perimeter, counting over and over. 1 set matched my tread. 1 was Jill's. Another matched Henry. The 4th was Maddie. But the 5th? Smaller. Narrower. Not barefoot, not a boot. Just off. Like the shape of a foot, but not quite human. They led directly to the 5th tent. And then they disappeared. We were breaking camp early, already on edge from the footprints and the 5th tent. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but we all knew we hadn't been alone that night. I was stuffing my sleeping bag when I heard my phone buzz. It was dead yesterday. I remember because I tried to take a picture of the weird tree rings by the lake, and it wouldn't even turn on. Now it was fully charged. And worse, it had a new voice memo. Time-stamped at 3:11 a.m. I don't remember recording anything. I played it. It started with silence. then static, then my voice. But not how I talk. The cadence was wrong. Slower. Almost like someone repeating me. I don't want to be out here anymore. Pause. The water's inside now. Pause. Then a whisper, not my voice at all. Let him keep speaking. It hasn't filled the last one yet. I shut the phone off and threw it in the lake. It rang anyway. We packed fast after that. No coffee. No breakfast. No one said a word. Jill was the one who found the Polaroids again, scattered outside the fifth tent like someone had tried to place them gently and gave up halfway. Except they were different now. The one where Henry had been carving the log? Now he wasn't in it. The one where I'd been looking off into the woods? Now I was facing the camera, smiling. And there were new ones. Maddie knee-deep in the lake, staring at something just below the surface. Jill curled in her tent with what looked like a second arm pressed against her shoulder. A hand that wasn't hers. And one last photo, still wet from developing. It showed all four of us, standing at the edge of camp, looking down into a sleeping bag that hadn't been opened yet. The fifth one, the one filled with water. Except this time, the bag was unzipped. And we were all smiling. We tried to leave. Every trail we took circled us back. The GPS just spun and blinked. After 4 false starts, we gave up and set camp again, this time away from the lake, deeper into the brush. Henry lit a small fire. Just 2 logs. We sat around it without speaking, just watching the flames. No one added wood. No one moved. We were too tired to be scared. Eventually we crashed in our tent. But I remember waking once, briefly, sometime after 3 a.m. The fire was still burning. But no one was up. I chalked it up to damp logs, maybe wind keeping the embers alive. I drifted back off. When we got up at dawn, the fire pit was dead, except for the faint heat still rising from the ashes. Maddie poked the pile with a stick and pulled out a freshly burned log, charred clean through. None of us added it. We only had 2 left in the bundle. Now there were 3 in the pit. Henry lifted one out. It had symbols carved into the wood, runes or maybe letters. They were blackened but still legible. One of them looked like a spiral. One of them looked like an open eye. The third one looked like a name. Mine. We didn't sleep that second night. The air was wrong, heavy, even without wind. It pressed in like fog you couldn't see, and everything was too quiet. No bugs. No birds. Just a hollow stillness, like something waiting for a sound to chase. At dawn, Jill wandered off to pee. Came back shaking. Someone carved something into that birch tree. I swear it wasn't there yesterday. We followed her. The trunk was pale and wide, and in the center of its smooth face, etched deep with something sharp, was a name. Maddie. It was perfect, clean. Not scrawled or jagged. More like written. Precise lettering, evenly spaced. She denied doing it. None of us believed she had. She started crying. The bark around the letters was wet. Sticky. Still bleeding sap. Fresh. I touched it. My fingers came away red. That's when I noticed the other names. Fainter. Lower on the trunk. Like they had been carved, then weathered over time. Jill. Henry. And at the very bottom, nearly hidden beneath the roots. Maddie. 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 Again and again. Smaller each time. It was Jill's idea to bring the trail cam. She's always the most prepared. Backup flashlights, water tablets, even a whistle none of us took seriously until last night. She'd strapped the cam to a pine tree overlooking the whole site. Wide angle. Motion triggered. On our last morning, with every one of us teetering between leaving and losing it, I took out the memory card and loaded it onto my phone. We huddled around the screen, huddled tighter with each clip. The first few were normal, us setting up, walking, laughing. Then came the still shots from last night. 2:41 a.m. The 4 of us asleep. 2:58 a.m. The 5th tent's zipper begins to move. Slowly. Upward. 3:02 a.m. It's open halfway. But there's no shape inside. Just blackness. 3:05 a.m. The flap falls wide open. 3:06 to 3:20 a.m. Still open. Still empty. No one comes out. But the fire flickers higher. The shadows stretch. 3:21 a.m. The flap drops shut again. By itself. I flipped through the final frames. Then paused. There was one more image. 3:33 a.m. The camera had turned, just slightly, to face our tents directly. None of us had touched it. And now, in the foreground, inches from the lens, a handprint. Slick. Blurred. Pressed from the inside of the lens cover. I zipped myself in tight. Pull string, top collar, everything. I wanted to hear the zip of it opening if anything came near me. Didn't sleep. Just listened. Heard Maddie whispering to herself. Heard Henry muttering, "This is fake," over and over. Heard Jill's breathing, fast and shallow like she was trying not to cry. Then I must have drifted. Just for a second. I woke up freezing. Neck exposed. Bag loose. Unzipped. I bolted upright, yanked the zipper the rest of the way. Shined my flashlight down my body. The bag was open to my chest. But not torn. Unzipped. And zipped shut again over my legs. From the outside. Like someone had peeled it open halfway. Watched me. Then tucked me back in. I sat up fully, shaking. That's when I saw it. A wet footprint at the mouth of my tent. Facing out. It hadn't stepped in. It had been standing there. Watching me sleep. And now for our next story. It was mid-October, off-season. We had the whole backcountry to ourselves. Verified with the ranger station before we even loaded our pack. No permits issued for the area but ours. We camped just off the ridge. Hiked a 6-mile loop that should have brought us back to an empty clearing. But when we returned, the site had changed. Our tents were still there, untouched. But nestled between mine and Charlie's was a green tent that hadn't been there this morning. Small. Perfectly staked. Flaps gently open like it had just been unzipped. I looked around, heart thumping. Did someone join us? Impossible, Charlie said. No one else is booked. No one passed us. Jenna walked over, called out a cautious hello. No answer. She poked her head inside. Empty. Sleeping bag rolled. A jacket folded into a pillow. Neatly placed gear. A paperback book with no title on the cover. Just one word inside. Observer. We were debating whether to pack up or confront whoever left the tent, if they'd just wandered off. Then she stepped into the clearing. From the opposite side of where we'd hiked in. She wore a dusty maroon hoodie, black hiking pants, a wool beanie pulled low. Her face was pale but pleasant. Calm. Hope I didn't spook you, she said. We all froze. Name's Ada, she added. We met yesterday. Remember? None of us did. Not even close. Charlie looked at me. I looked at Jenna. We'd hiked the whole loop. We would have seen someone camped near us. Ada smiled like we were all in on some joke. Like we'd just forgotten an old friend. I was the one who told you to skip the northern fork, she said, dropping her pack beside the green tent. Good thing too. You would have gotten lost. We hadn't taken a northern fork. There hadn't been one. And her hands? They didn't have dirt under the nails. No tan lines from a pack strap. Not a scratch or bite or bug on her. Like she hadn't been hiking at all. Like she'd just appeared. We didn't even realize anything was gone until Jenna tried to prep lunch. She opened the food sack, froze, then dumped it out right there on the dirt. Empty. Every Ziploc. Every bar. Every sealed pouch. Gone. All four of us tore through our packs, thinking maybe we'd stashed stuff wrong during the ridge hike. Nothing. Then Ada spoke, casual as the breeze. Oh, I've got extra, she said. She popped open a small blue cooler by her tent, one none of us remembered seeing, and waved us over. Inside were perfectly packed containers. Ours. Charlie's handwriting on the labels. The same freeze-dried meals. Same inventory list we printed before the trip. All of it. Down to the stupid Jenna equals Granola Queen sticker we'd made as a joke. But now everything was sorted, organized, and frozen solid. She smiled as she handed me a container. You were going to forget this anyway. I didn't take it. The label said, Leftovers, end of day 4. This was day 2. We sat by the fire that night. Low embers. No wind. Ada told stories. Simple ones. Harmless. But the longer she talked, the more it felt like she wasn't telling them for the first time. She already knew our names, our favorite trails, that Jenna hated whiskey but always packed a bottle anyway. Then she leaned forward, smile calm and curious. So, she asked, where are you all from again? We each gave our city, state, and how far we'd driven. She nodded slowly. That's what you said last time. Charlie blinked. What? She chuckled and sipped from her flask. Nothing. Déjà vu. But I saw her eyes. Not amused. Not teasing. Checking. Like she was making sure we still matched something. A record. A list. Or a memory she wasn't supposed to forget. Ada pulled out an old instant camera just before sunset. Said she liked to document her hikes, the old-fashioned way. She took a few pictures. Click whir, slap of the print sliding out the top. We smiled because we were trying to be normal. Trying not to show the tension in our neck. Charlie even forced a laugh when she joked, say wilderness or be wilderness. She pinned the photos to a string inside her tent to dry. That night, after she went to sleep, or at least zipped herself in, we peeked inside to look at the shots. Jenna held the flashlight while I turned them one by one. The first few were harmless. All of us by the fire. Me pretending to toast a stick. Charlie tying his boot. But then there was one that stopped us cold. It showed the 4 of us lying in our tent. Not posing. Sleeping. Tents zipped. Eyes shut. Blankets pulled high. But we were outside in the photo. Like someone had peeled the tent walls away to capture us. And in the background, near the camera's angle, was Ada's tent. Closed. Her flashlight wasn't on. And yet, she wasn't in the shot. I couldn't sleep after the photo. None of us could. We took shifts, watched the clearing, listened for movement. But Ada didn't stir. Her tent just sat there, silent, sealed. Then around 2 a.m., the glow started. A faint light, not from the inside, but almost like the fabric was reacting to something, like phosphorescence. Greenish yellow. Sickly. Jenna said maybe it was glow paint, but the material looked the same as ours. No chemical coating. No seams. Nothing weird in daylight. Charlie crept close to check. I followed, holding my breath. When we got within 10 feet, the air changed. Hot. Dry. Chemical. The kind of sterile burn you smell in hospital wings or after a fire's been smothered. Charlie gagged. You smell that? I nodded, eyes watering. He leaned in, whispered Ada's name. No answer. Then we heard it, something moving inside the tent. Not shifting or breathing. Not snoring. Typing. Like fingers dancing across an old keyboard. Click, click, click. No screen glow. No device visible through the nylon. Just the sound of someone recording, fast and furious, like they were documenting every second we stood outside. The next morning, Ada was already up when we crawled out of our tent. She handed us coffee like nothing was wrong, smiling like we were all just great friends enjoying the crisp mountain air. When she wandered off toward the creek, I slipped into her tent. It was spotless. No dirt. No clutter. No signs of wear. Just the sleeping bag, the cooler, the book, still blank, and a single gray pillow. I lifted the pillow. A folded list lay beneath it. My name was at the top. Charlie's. Jenna's. Even Ada's was there, last. All of them were crossed off with a single black line. Except mine. No checkmark. No date. Just open and waiting. I flipped the paper over. The back had 3 columns. First visit. A return. Accepted. Only Ada's row had all 3 checked. I stepped out of the tent fast, trying to keep my face still. Jenna caught my eye. I think we're on a schedule, I whispered. She didn't ask for proof. Just said, then what happens when the list is full? We broke camp by noon. Didn't tell Ada we were leaving. Just started packing quietly while she wandered the far tree-line with her camera. The ridge path we used to enter the forest had been narrow but visible when we first arrived, flag tape, old boot tracks, a trail marker nailed to a pine. Now it was gone. Not overgrown. Not obscured. Gone. Like the forest had shifted. Folded inward. And sealed shut behind us. I ran back to Ada's tent and grabbed the laminated map she kept rolled in her outer pouch. It was topographical, with a few markings scratched in pen. There was no ridge trail at all. Instead, where our entry point should have been, she'd drawn a thick red X. Next to it, access, sealed after arrival. Charlie grabbed the GPS and tried to ping a satellite. The device blinked, updated, rebooted, then showed a single word at the bottom of the screen. Committed. I looked up and Ada was watching us, smiling, like she'd just finished checking something off. We tried to play it cool, to not look panicked as we circled back to camp and silently agreed. We're leaving. Even if we don't know how. Ada was waiting near her tent, crouched like she'd been expecting us. Before I could speak, she stood and handed me a backpack. Here, she said softly. This was yours. You dropped it. It wasn't mine. It looked like mine, but the stitching was off. The zipper pull had a different logo, one I didn't recognize. The brand hadn't made bags in over a decade. Still, my hands reached for it like muscle memory. The weight was right. I opened the front pocket. Inside was a laminated ID card. My name. My birthday. A photo of me that I didn't remember taking. And beneath it, printed in bold red. Blood type, O+. Cleared. Observer class. I looked up. How did you? Ada tilted her head, eyes narrowing. You always drop it. Every time. Then she turned and walked into the woods. No trail. No urgency. Just gone. We didn't follow her. We just stood there, watching the trees close behind her like curtains. That night no one slept. We sat by the dead fire with our backs to each other, facing outward like animals waiting for a predator to pick one off. Around 2:47 a.m., I saw a light bobbing between the trees. It was Ada, walking with her camera, alone. She didn't look at us, just circled the camp once, then disappeared again. Charlie muttered, "She's not coming back." We agreed. But at sunrise, her tent was there, closed, still glowing faintly. I stepped forward and unzipped it. She lay inside, peaceful, smiling. Her hands folded over her chest like someone had posed her there. The air was ice cold around her. Her skin, even colder. No breath. No pulse. Jenna touched her shoulder. Pulled back fast. She's been dead all night. Then we saw the notebook, tucked beside her pillow. Only one sentence written across the last page. We've arrived. The rest will follow. And now for our last story. We'd checked in like always, signed the log at the ranger station, confirmed the coordinates, even joked about being the only ones out that deep. The ranger, a wiry guy with a stiff smile, tapped the desk with his pen and said, "Site 7? Haven't had anyone book that one in month. You'll have it all to yourselves." Perfect. Except when we reached Site 7, someone was already there. A tent, brown, low profile, older model. Faded rainfly, fly sheet flapping just slightly in the breeze. It sat at the edge of the clearing, angled just off-center like someone didn't quite finish setting it up. We called out. No answer. Charlie moved closer and cupped his hands around his mouth. "Hey! This is a reserved site." Still nothing. We thought maybe someone wandered off. Got lost. Needed help. But the gear inside the tent? Dry. Clean. Folded like it hadn't been touched in weeks. And on the inside wall, stitched into the fabric in looping red thread. "Don't unzip." We unzipped it anyway. Of course we did. I don't even remember who pulled the flap open. Just that it happened in one clean motion, like the tent wanted to be opened. Inside were clothes. Folded. Lined up like military inventory. Pants like Charlie's. Flannel like mine. Even a scarf Jenna had packed 3 trips ago and lost in Utah. Same brands. Same colors. But when we held them up, all too small. A size off. Like someone had copied our gear from memory, but got the scale wrong. Beneath the clothes was a pair of boots, mud-caked and old. But they weren't ours. Too narrow. Soles worn flat. One had a single red shoelace tied in a figure-8 pattern, like a knot you'd use to secure something or bind it. Charlie flipped one over. The sole had initials etched into it with a pocket knife. Faded, but clear enough. See, well, his own. He dropped the boot and backed away fast. That's when we noticed the inside of the tent flap wasn't nylon anymore. It was lined with photos. Of us. Sleeping. We didn't sleep that night. The wind picked up around midnight, carrying the sound of leaves rustling, but under it, softer and slower, we all heard it. Breathing. Not ours. A fifth rhythm, low and steady. Coming from the edge of the camp. From the direction of that tent. At first we tried to explain it away. The wind. Some animal just outside the firelight. But it didn't wander. It didn't shuffle or crunch or move at all. It just breathed. Long, wet pulls of air. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. None of us dared look. The fire had burned too low, and no one wanted to be the one to shine a light into it. I whispered to Charlie. He didn't respond. I whispered again. He was sitting upright, eyes wide, shaking. His lips were moving. I leaned closer. He was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's when I realized what he was doing. There were 5 breaths, but only 4 of us. I'd tried to stay awake. Swore I wouldn't drift again. But exhaustion has a way of tricking you, pulling your thoughts sideways until you forget what you're afraid of. I woke choking. Couldn't breathe. My face was buried in grit. Dust and dried leaves pressed against my mouth. The air inside the tent was thick, wrong. I sat up fast, gasping. My sleeping bag was twisted around my legs. The zipper was halfway up. I reached for the door and yanked. It didn't move. Zipped shut. From the outside. I fumbled for my light, smacked it 3 times before the beam clicked on. And what I saw on the inside of the tent flap stopped my breath again. The whole surface was coated in dust. But someone had written in it. Long, dragging letters like a fingertip sliding through fine ash. Stay in. I screamed for the others. Kicked my way out, tearing the flap at the seam. Jenna and Charlie ran over, but the other tent, the 5th one, was gone. Not packed. Not taken. Gone. Like it had been peeled off the ground. By morning, the mood had shifted from fear to strategy. No one said it out loud, but we'd all silently agreed, we're done. Whatever this was, whoever this belonged to, we weren't staying another night. We threw our gear together in minutes. No breakfast. No water. Just shoving bags into packs and packs onto backs, heading for the trail that would lead us to the lot where the car waited. Or was supposed to. When we reached the gravel pull-off, the car was still there. But the doors were unlocked. And the glove box was hanging open. Charlie let out a hiss of panic. The keys were in there. I left them in there. He dumped the entire box onto the seat. Flashlight, trail tags, charger cord, granola bar wrapper. No keys. Just one thing we hadn't seen before. A piece of folded paper. A campsite receipt. Dated for tomorrow. Our names were all there, typed out perfectly. Under check-in time, someone had written in pen. Accepted. Keys held for processing. On the back was a hand-drawn sketch of our tent layout. 5 tents. Not 4. We went looking. We had no plan. Just anger and adrenaline, stomping into the woods yelling, swearing, threatening shadows. Jenna broke down first, sobbing and kicking at the underbrush until something cracked underfoot. It was a bone. Tiny. Hollow. Like a bird's. Then we saw the others. Dozens of them, arranged in a perfect spiral. They curled inward like a shell, like something had been summoned and left its footprint in anatomy. Some had moss on them. Some were fresh. At the center of the spiral was a phone. Charlie's. Cracked down the middle, screen dead. Except sound was still playing. I picked it up and held it close. It was our voices. Not talking. Not laughing. Just panicked breathing. Gasping. Then a whisper. Get back in the tent. It won't start over until we do. Then silence. Then the audio loop. And looped again. And again. Each time it played, the spiral of bones seemed closer. We didn't stay to see what would be in the center next time. We made it back to camp right before sundown, even though we hadn't meant to. It felt like the woods were steering us there. Subtle turns, familiar rocks, a downed tree we'd stepped over that morning showing up again, this time on the opposite side of the trail. The tents were there. 4. Neatly spaced. And a fifth one again. Reassembled. Just standing there. No one had put it up. No gear scattered around it. No footprints near the stake. The dirt under it was smooth, untouched. Like the earth itself had pushed it upward. We didn't speak. We couldn't. Then, just as the sun began to dip, the tent collapsed. Not like it was knocked over. No sound. No wind. It folded inward, all four corners drawing together at the top, like a balloon deflating in reverse. And just as quickly, it rose again. Fully pitched. Fully sealed. Jenna whimpered. Charlie backed up and whispered. I watched it. It breathed. And when I looked at the tent again, there was a dark handprint pressed against the inside of the rainfly. Still spreading. Like it was trying to feel its way out. We didn't notice them at first. It wasn't until I went to grab my pack that I saw the photos, fluttering near the fire pit like autumn leaves. About 20 of them, scattered in a loose arc. At first, I thought they were the same ones from earlier, shots of us sleeping, cooking, laughing. But these were new. They were cold, glossy, unbent, and we weren't in them. The first few showed an empty camp, like it had been abandoned in a hurry. Then came the darker ones. The tents, zipped but stained with something black. Our gear, burning, but casting no smoke. The spiral of bones, wider now. With something at its center. Blurry. Low to the ground. Watching the camera. The last photo was a close-up of the fifth tent. Not from outside. From inside. A stitched flap peeled just open enough to reveal the camera lens peeking through. And in the reflection on the fabric. Someone holding the camera. Wearing my jacket. We didn't run. We marched. No more talking, no looking back. Just feet on dirt, lungs burning, knees buckling. Whatever it took to get to that ranger station and beg someone to tell us we were still real. We reached it just before midnight. No lights were on, but the door was unlocked. Inside, the air was too cold. The radio sat silent. The coffee pot was full, warm, but hadn't been touched. No one in sight. But the clipboard was there. Same one we'd signed when we checked in. I flipped to the last page. Our names. All four. Check-in time. 4:48 p.m., 3 days ago. Underneath, a fifth name had been added. No first name. Just Walker, 5th. Beside it, a black spiral. Ink still wet. Below that, someone had scribbled a note in thick red pen, underlined 3 times. All campers accounted for. 5th has returned. I looked up, and for the first time in hours, I dared to speak. What does that mean? The wall-mounted ranger map flipped from inside the back office. Not fell. Flipped. Like someone was standing behind it. They never believed us. Not the rangers. Not our families. Not the park liaison who offered us mental health assistance, and said the backcountry trail we mentioned didn't exist anymore. Jenna moved across the country. Charlie doesn't return messages. We haven't spoken since the day we signed the release forms and were told never to return to Site 7. I thought that was the end, until I woke up 3 days ago with tent stakes tangled in my sheet. Cold. Covered in red clay. The same kind from the lake bed we camped on. Yesterday it was a strip of nylon. Same color as the 5th tent. This morning, I found the photo, folded inside a canvas satchel I've never seen before, sitting at the foot of my bed. It was me, sleeping. And behind me, barely visible in the shadow between the trees, a fifth figure, head tilted, smiling.